Illinois faces some big challenges. Today, you're about to hear a truly honest analysis of the problems we face. Equally important, you'll also hear an in-depth discussion of some practical solutions. This is your radio source for stories, the insight, and the answers you won't hear anywhere else, not in the media, and not coming from Springfield. You're listening to Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Opportunity Project. Now, here's your host, AM 560's Dan Proft.
Welcome to another edition of Illinois Rising. Dan Proft, co-host of Chicago's Morning Answer, weekdays 5 to 9 a.m. on AM 560 with Amy Jacobson. My co-host on this show, on this installment, Pat Hughes, co-founder of the Illinois Opportunity Project. This week, Governor Bruce Rauner vetoed legislation that State Representative Sam Yingling from up Grays Lake Way, up in Lake County, had introduced to have an elected assessor in Lake County. That was Yingling's big idea for property tax reform, is have an elected assessor rather than an appointed one. I'm not sure I understand why that would matter in terms of Lake County having the 22nd highest median property tax rate of any county in the country. 3, 4, 5 times the national average for, well, residents where Yingling lives in Grays Lake. And just juxtapose that to outgoing Cook County Assessor Joe Barrios, who was elected. His big claim to fame is that we complete the assessments on time. And so you're efficient in and punctual with the scam. It doesn't change the underlying nature of the scam, whether you're on time, whatever that means, or late. Who cares? It's still this. It's the math that matters. It's the burden that matters. It's the home equity destroying property taxes that matter, not the timeliness of implementing the scam. But apparently that is not something Yingling wants to address, and so he does this misdirection play with this, we're going to elect the assessor, and somehow that's going to make the system more accountable to local taxpayers. It's just a lie. So Rauner was right to veto it, something that you rarely get to say about Rauner. Adam Solano is a former candidate for state representative. He ran the primary. In the interest of full disclosure, I, through my PAC, supported his opponent, the nominee who's running against Yingling, Ken Idstein, both in the primary, and I'll be supporting his candidacy in the general election, so factor that in however you want. But we're pleased to be joined by Adam Solano, who is, since he lost the primary fair and square, has folded in with Idstein and is supporting Ken against Yingling. He's also launched a website called scamyingling.com. You see, scam, Sam.
See what he did there?
Yeah.
I know, it's clever. It is clever. It's catchy.
Well, it's more than clever URL, and it is. It's the content there on the issue that's a particular focus for me as well, which is property taxes. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Adam Solano. Adam, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So tell us about the genesis of scamyingling.com and the message that you're trying to deliver to voters in district.
Yeah, the genesis of it was really like many things that can happen in life. It was somewhat serendipitous. I was speaking to some people that were longtime residents of Lake County and had known Sam for a long time and had been in the real estate business. I just happened to live on one of the lakes in the district, and they said, yeah, Sam lives on, a lake not too far from you, and by the way, it's a big giant house, and not quite sure how he can afford to live in a big home like that. And so I just filed it away as curious, and as I was progressing along in the campaign, the curiosity got the cat a little bit more, and so I decided to find out which lake. Gosh, I'd like to see. He's always talking about property taxes, what his taxes look like and what his property looks like. And lo and behold, when I did find out where he lived, and I then took a look at his tax bill, because it's all public information on the assessor site, he pays about 40% less than I do. And he's got a very nice home. He's a lakefront property, an entire acre of land, almost 3,500 square feet, with a 3-car detached garage. I'd love to have an acre of land with 3,500 square feet and a 3-car detached garage. My house is about a third smaller. I have a 2-car attached garage, yet I'm paying about 30 to 40% more in taxes. And so that that's kind of started me on a mission. I'm like, this just doesn't look right. It doesn't smell right. And that was the genesis. And I go, this guy's been scamming us. He's a self-appointed tax cutter. Every mailing that he puts out, he's got this little tax cutter image, and it drove me crazy. So that was going to be my issue if I had become the nominee, if I had beat Ken. I didn't. Ken and I ran good race. We actually became friendly and friends in the process. And so I said, hey, can I join you? I'd like to continue with this idea, and I'll run along on the side here and kind of expose what's going on, because many people kept coming to me saying, yeah, we've looked at it, we've looked at it, we've looked at it, we've looked at it. And I said, well, you got to pull a farther lens. You can't just look at his stuff. You got to kind of compare it to what's going on with his neighbors and his lake and the other lakes. And it was striking. I mean, it wasn't like a small difference. It's 30%, 40%, 60, 70, 80% less assessment value than other comparable properties. And it's a complete scam, complete dishonest when someone says, I am your tax cutting champion, when you've enjoyed tax cuts and when you've enjoyed low assessments. Yet everybody you represent, in theory, your clients, we are all burdened by tax bills going up. And there's not a single person I know, and maybe even an earshot of this radio program, that is paying less taxes today than they were 6 years ago. And when I say that, each and every time I just throw out that one line, everybody's eyebrows go up. And so that's where it all started, and spent a lot of time going, because I wanted to be factual. I didn't want to be, I wanted to be very specific and very factual with this information, so it was right.
Adam, what is the charge about that you're laying out there about how this came to be, where Sam Yingling, the state representative, who's obviously connected, how did he come to have property taxes so much lower on a percentage basis than his constituents?
When there was an article written recently about it, there were some phone calls made to the township assessor's office, and the answer that has been given before was, well, there was some part of his property was in the lake, and so he was being taxed for some property. We had to reassess it and remove some of this usable land value off of the assessment. And everybody went, oh, okay, that's why it's such a low value. But it's almost statistically meaningless. After they reassessed the land and made a correction, the land value assessment only went down by about $1,000. About 1.2%, 1.3%. So it's almost statistically meaningless when it comes to that. So specifically why it is so low, I mean, if you just kind of put some other pieces in place and take a look at his position at the Avon Township, he was the Avon Township supervisor. He's put people in place there that are his supporters. There's a Lake County board member who's one of his allies that also works in his real estate office. So, he's a Lake County board member, works in Sam's real estate office, and is the Avon Township supervisor. And every time we call the township, they're like, you got to look apples to apples. Well, there are no apples to apples. There isn't another 3,500 square foot, 3-car detached garage on an acre property. There isn't one. So they can fly below the radar.
He's the Louis Gutierrez of Lake County. I'm surprised his property's on the rolls at all. These pictures that you have at scamyingling.com, the comparisons to other homes similarly situated in the same community, are remarkable, frankly. I mean, you've got a home here, just for example, that's in the same community on a 1/4 acre. So 1/4 the property size of Yingling, and certainly much less descript in terms of foliage and all the rest, landscaping. And they pay more property taxes than he does. It's rather remarkable. Do you think the property tax message, I mean, in Gray's Lake in particular, is the property tax message penetrating such that not just people understand property taxes are high, way too high. I can't afford them. They're destroying my home equity. But they're connecting the dots to how we fund schools. They're connecting the dots to the political power structure in this state. And they're thinking, we got to make a change at the state legislative level here locally.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of banter going around, going door to door. And when I was going to door, people are, I'm a financial advisor for a living, and people are making long-term plans. They're like, this is not sustainable for us. And, once we get the kiddos through the Grays Lake system or the Wakanda system, we've got to get out of here. We cannot this is not a long-term viable option for us. And people are starting to connect the dots. It's a wedge issue. It's a volatile issue. And that's why, Sam's clever, and he likes to scam us. People that scam you are clever. And I think that was his whole modus operandi behind the SB 2544 and the Lake County Assessor. He could come out looking like the victor if it got passed, or he can look like the victim to us taxpayers because it got voted down.
Right. I
tried
to do something. I tried to elect the Lake County Assessor, and then the follow-up question, and so what would that do to my property taxes? How would that impact my property taxes? And the answer is it wouldn't, which was why your URL and complete with easy-to-follow pictures is so excellent. ScamYingling.com is the website. Adam Solano is the gentleman who launched it, former candidate for state representative, financial services professional up in Lake County. Adam, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.